A global shakeup is unfolding as China partners with Africa to build one of the largest soybean farms on Earth, and US farmers are calling it a disaster. This move could rewrite supply chains, shift power, and spark a new battle over food security. Let's break down what's really happening. Why China is expanding soybean farming in Africa. China is turning to Africa because its demand for soybeans keeps growing every year. Local production inside China cannot meet the rising need for animal feed, cooking oil, and food processing. At the same time, global prices are becoming harder to control, and China wants a more secure and steady supply. African nations offer huge fertile land areas, lower production costs, and climates suitable for large-scale farming. By working directly with African partners, China gets long-term access to raw materials without depending on unpredictable global markets. Africa, on the other hand, becomes a key part of China's farming network. This cooperation helps China avoid shortages, develop new supply corridors, and build strong agricultural ties that support its growing domestic needs. The scale and location of the new mega soybean project. The new project is one of the biggest agricultural partnerships between China and Africa. Several African regions, especially in Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, offer millions of acres of open farmland suitable for soybean production. These areas provide the ideal climate and soil conditions for a massive modern farming operation. China plans to introduce large-scale irrigation systems, high-yield seeds, and advanced farming machinery to increase productivity. The project is designed to cover thousands of hectares in its first stage, with expansion plans already being discussed. The location also makes transport easier thanks to ports along the east coast of Africa, allowing quick shipments to Chinese markets. China's strategic goals: cutting dependence on US imports. China has relied heavily on the United States for soybeans for many years, making the supply chain vulnerable to trade conflicts, price hikes, and political tensions. By building a strong production base in Africa, China reduces its exposure to market swings caused by US exporters. This move helps China secure a more stable supply for its large livestock and food industries. Working with African nations also gives China more control over production standards and farming methods. The broader strategy is to create an alternative soybean pipeline that limits disruptions during global disagreements or shipping delays. Reducing reliance on one major supplier strengthens China's bargaining power and lowers its long-term costs. How African governments are responding to the partnership. African governments see this partnership as a chance to grow their farming sectors and attract foreign investment. Countries involved welcome China's support because it brings job opportunities, new farming knowledge, and improved technology. Many leaders view the project as a way to turn unused land into productive farmland, helping rural communities expand their income. Governments are also negotiating terms to protect local interests, such as ensuring fair land use and promoting local participation. Some nations expect the partnership to boost exports, strengthen food security, and increase overall development. While there are debates about land ownership and long-term impact, most governments see the deal as a strategic economic opportunity. Investment plans, land, technology, and infrastructure. The partnership includes major investments in land development, advanced farming technology, and new infrastructure. China plans to introduce modern machinery, precision farming tools, and improved crop varieties to increase productivity. Large irrigation networks, storage facilities, and processing centers are also part of the development plan. These upgrades help African regions reduce crop losses and strengthen their local agricultural systems. China is investing in new transport routes, such as roads and rail connections, to move soybeans more efficiently to ports. The goal is to create a full supply chain that starts from seed production and ends with export-ready goods. By building these systems, China ensures a reliable supply, while African communities gain stronger farming capacity, better tools, and more stable long-term development. Why US farmers are calling this a disaster. US farmers are alarmed because the China-Africa soybean project could reduce demand for American soybeans. For years, the US has been a primary supplier of soybeans to China, earning billions in export revenue. If China sources more soybeans from Africa, US producers could face lower prices and shrinking markets. This threatens farmers' income, local economies, and rural communities that rely heavily on farming. Many U.S. agricultural groups warn that this deal could disrupt long-standing trade relationships and weaken the country's influence in global markets. Farmers fear that China's investments in Africa, combined with modern farming methods, will create a competitive advantage that the U.S. may struggle to match. Global soybean market impact and price competition. The China-Africa partnership is likely to shake the global soybean market. By increasing production outside traditional suppliers, global supply may rise, pushing prices down. Countries that export soybeans, including the US, Brazil, and Argentina, may face stronger competition. China's strategy could force other nations to improve efficiency or reduce costs to stay competitive. Lower prices might benefit buyers, but hurt farmers in regions with higher production costs. Investors and traders are already analyzing how Africa's growing soybean output could shift trade flows and profit margins. This competition could also encourage innovation in farming techniques, crop management, and logistics worldwide. The change in supply sources signals a potential reshaping of global agricultural markets, where countries must adapt quickly to new competitors and evolving demand patterns. Environmental and local community concerns in Africa. Large-scale soybean farming in Africa raises questions about environmental impact and local communities. Clearing vast land areas can lead to deforestation, soil degradation, and water shortages. Some experts warn that introducing intensive farming methods may disturb local ecosystems. Communities near farms are concerned about land access, displacement, and changes to traditional farming practices. However, proponents argue that proper planning, technology, and regulations can minimize harm. Local farmers may benefit from new training, job opportunities, and infrastructure improvements, but fair land agreements are crucial. Governments and companies need to balance economic gains with environmental protection. Sustainable farming practices, reforestation, and responsible water use can reduce negative effects. How this deal changes future trade power dynamics. This deal shifts the balance of trade power in global agriculture. By securing direct access to African farmland, China reduces dependence on traditional suppliers and strengthens its influence over soybean supply chains. This creates a new competitive advantage that other countries must consider. Nations exporting soybeans to China may face declining demand, reducing their leverage in negotiations. The partnership also encourages Africa to play a bigger role in global food markets, giving local governments more say in trade deals. Over time, this could lead to stronger China-Africa economic ties and change regional alliances. Who ultimately benefits and what comes next? The primary winner of this deal appears to be China, which secures a reliable soybean supply while strengthening ties with Africa. African governments could benefit through investment, infrastructure development, and employment opportunities. Local communities might see improved farming practices and better access to markets. US and other traditional suppliers may lose influence, forcing them to adapt and innovate. Global consumers could gain from lower soybean prices and more stable supply chains. Looking ahead, expansion plans may include more regions, advanced farming technology, and integrated trade routes. The success of this partnership depends on careful management, environmental safeguards, and fair treatment of local communities. This project could set a precedent for future agricultural collaborations and reshape how countries approach global food security and trade partnerships. This soybean deal could reshape global farming, trade power, and food security for years to come. The story is far from over. If you want quick updates on global power shifts and economic moves, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice builds this community.